In the quiet valley of Oak Haven, where the river murmured secrets to ancient stones, and the great sentinel oak stood guard against the whispers of the wider world, lived a girl named Ilara. She was a creature of soft footfalls and quieter thoughts, often found perched on mossy rocks by the stream, or tucked into the crook of a gnarled branch, watching the world through eyes that saw just a little bit more than everyone else's. Oak Haven was a place of comforting routines. Smoke curled from stone chimneys at dawn, carrying the scent of hearth-baked bread and brewing chamomile tea. Children chased sun-dappled butterflies through meadows of wild thyme and clover. The adults, with hands calloused from honest work, tilled their small plots, wove sturdy baskets from willow reeds, and bartered their goods with the occasional traveling merchant who dared to venture so deep into the verdant heart of the Whisperwood. Life here was simple, predictable, and profoundly peaceful. But Ilara's world held an extra layer of shimmer, a silent symphony that played just beneath the surface of the ordinary. She saw it in the way the morning dew clung to a spider web, not just as water droplets but as tiny, glittering universes, each winking with an inner light. She saw it in the fleeting iridescence of a dragonfly's wing, not merely sunlight refraction but a living breath of color. And she heard it in the rustle of leaves, not just the wind, but the soft, sighing voices of the trees sharing ancient memories. From a very young age, Ilara had tried to explain these things. "Mama, look." She'd point to the air where faint, almost imperceptible motes of light danced like dust in a sunbeam, but with an intelligent, purposeful drift. "The air is singing." Or, "Papa, the river is weaving silver threads." Her parents, kind and patient, would smile. "That's just the sunlight, little starling," her mother would say, stroking her hair. "And the river, darling, is just the water." They attributed it to a child's vivid imagination, a fanciful mind, and perhaps a touch too much time spent reading old storybooks. Ilara learned eventually to keep her observations to herself. It wasn't that she didn't believe her parents, it was more that she understood they simply couldn't quite see. It was like trying to describe the taste of a sun-ripened berry to someone who had only ever known plain bread. How could you explain the burst of sweetness, the subtle tartness, the lingering warmth, if they had no frame of reference? So, she treasured her secret world, letting it unfold around her, a constant, gentle marvel. She spent her days exploring. Her favorite haunt was the ancient, sprawling Whisperwood that cradled Oak Haven. Here, the trees grew taller, their branches laced together to form a cathedral ceiling of emerald and gold. The air was cool and smelled of damp earth and growing things. It was here, amidst the deepest glades, that Ilara first became truly aware of what she would later call the Whis. The Whis were different from the everyday shimmers and glows she perceived. They were rarer, more profound, and carried a sense of vast age like echoes from the very beginning of time. They manifested as faint, almost soundless currents of light, like streaks of cosmic dust caught in an eternal breeze. They weren't bright or dazzling, but subtle, a delicate phosphorescence that pulsed with an inner ethereal glow. Sometimes they looked like shimmering threads, gossamer thin, weaving through the undergrowth. Other times, they appeared as tiny, barely visible motes, drifting upwards like embers from a forgotten fire, vanishing into the forest canopy. They made no sound, yet Ilara felt them as a silent melody, a hum that resonated deep within her bones. She first encountered a concentration of them near the sunken glade, a place where the forest floor dipped into a bowl-like depression, always shaded, always damp, and home to bioluminescent mosses and ferns that glowed with a soft internal light. Here the Whis were thicker, congregating in lazy spirals, like invisible currents made visible by their faint luminescence. They seemed to dance with an ancient rhythm, a slow, deliberate waltz that spoke of patience and timelessness. Ilara would spend hours in the sunken glade, sitting perfectly still, simply observing. She noticed that where the Whis were densest, the forest life seemed to flourish with an unusual vitality. The mosses glowed brighter, the flowers bloomed in richer hues, and even the air itself felt more alive, charged with a gentle, invigorating energy. She never tried to catch the Whis. Instinct told her they were too delicate, too ephemeral to be held. They were meant to be witnessed, to be felt, to be understood in. For years, the Whis were a beautiful, constant backdrop to her secret life. They were the silent guardians of the forest, the unseen weavers of its magic. But as Ilara grew from a child, into a young woman of 16 summers. A subtle change began to creep into her extraordinary perception. It started slowly, like the imperceptible dimming of a distant star. The everyday shimmers, the playful light motes in the air, seemed a little less vibrant. The river's silver threads appeared a touch duller. And the Whis, her cherished ancient Whis, were becoming fainter. At first, Ilara thought it was her eyes, or perhaps her imagination playing tricks. She would blink hard, rub her temples, and stare intently into the sunken glade. But no matter how she tried, the delicate phosphorescence that once pulsed with quiet strength now seemed hesitant, almost shy. The threads of light were thinner, fewer, and their silent melody, once a resonant hum, was now a mere whisper, easily lost in the ordinary sounds of the forest. A creeping unease began to settle in her heart. She noticed other things too, subtle changes that the villagers, accustomed to their predictable world, might not attribute to anything extraordinary. The late-blooming moon-petal flowers, famous for their luminous petals that opened only under the full moon, seemed less brilliant this year, their glow a milky pale compared to the vibrant silver Ilara remembered from her childhood. The honey from the wild bees, usually thick with the sweetness of summer, tasted a little less potent, its faint magical warmth diminished. Even the songs of the forest birds seemed less joyful, their melodies carrying a note of subdued melancholy. Ilara tried to ask her mother about the moon petals. "They're beautiful, Mama, but don't you think they're a little fainter this season?" Her mother peered at the glowing blossoms in the twilight. "Nonsense, dear. They're as lovely as ever. Perhaps you're just growing up and seeing them with less youthful wonder." But Ilara knew it wasn't a loss of wonder. It was a loss of, "I liked mine." The feeling of unease solidified into a quiet dread. If the Whis were truly fading, what did that mean for Oakhaven? For the Whisperwood? For the very magic that wove through the world? She felt a growing sense of responsibility, a silent burden. For she was the only one who seemed to truly perceive the extent of the diminishment. One crisp autumn evening, as the first golden leaves drifted from the ancient oaks and the air carried the scent of wood smoke and damp earth, Ilara sat by her window, watching the stars begin to prick the darkening sky. Tonight, even the stars seemed a little less brilliant, their light somehow muted. A profound sadness settled over her. She knew she couldn't simply watch the Whis disappear. She had to do something. But what? Who would even understand? There was one person in Oakhaven who might. Not because they saw the Whis as she did, but because they understood the world in ways others didn't. Old Lyra lived in a small, crooked cottage on the very edge of the Whisperwood, where the forest began to thicken into impassable tangles. Lyra was the village storyteller, the healer, and the keeper of old lore. Her eyes, though clouded with age, held a sharp knowing glint, and her hands, gnarled from years of spinning and weaving, moved with a quiet wisdom. Villagers brought her their ailments, their troubles, and sometimes their dreams. Lyra would listen, offer a calming tea or a simple insightful word that often cut to the heart of the matter. Ilara had always been a little intimidated by Lyra, not out of fear, but out of reverence. Lyra seemed to exist on a different plane, her mind humming with stories and knowledge that predated anyone else's memory. But now, driven by a quiet desperation, Ilara knew she had to seek her out. The next morning, with the sun barely kissing the highest peaks, Ilara slipped out of her cottage. She carried a small basket of fresh-baked oat cakes and a tiny vial of the sweetest forest honey, a customary offering when visiting Lyra. The air was cool and invigorating, and the birds had begun their morning chorus, though even their songs felt a little less vibrant to Ilara's attuned ears. She followed the winding path that led away from the village, deeper into the forest. The trees here were older, their roots thick and knotted, forming natural steps and benches along the way. Sunlight dappled through the canopy in shifting patterns, illuminating patches of moss and fern. Ilara kept her eyes peeled, searching for any sign of the Whis. She saw a few, faint and ghostly, drifting like forgotten dreams. Each sighting was a bittersweet pang in her chest, relief that they were still there, sadness that they were so diminished. After a walk of nearly an hour, the path narrowed and became almost overgrown. The air grew cooler, and the scent of damp earth mingled with something else, a faint, sweet aroma of dried herbs and wood smoke. Through a curtain of trailing vines and ancient ivy, Ilara saw it, Lyra's cottage. It was a charmingly eccentric dwelling, built of rough-hewn logs and thatched with mossy straw. Wildflowers grew in riotous profusion around its base, and a small, meticulously tended herb garden flourished beside the front door. Smoke curled lazily from its crooked chimney, and a faint, rhythmic ga-thump-thump emanated from within, the sound of a loom at work. Taking a deep breath, Elara pushed aside the vines and approached the wooden door. She knocked gently, her heart a fluttering bird against her ribs. The thump-thumping ceased. A moment of silence, then the creak of the door opening inward. Lyra stood there, her small frame wrapped in a homespun shawl. Her silver hair was braided with dried flowers and herbs, and her eyes, deep-set and wise, fixed upon Elara. A faint smile touched her lips. "Elara." Lyra's voice was like the rustle of dry leaves, soft but clear. "I sensed your coming. Come in, child, come in." Elara stepped inside, blinking as her eyes adjusted to the dim, cozy interior. The cottage was a treasure trove of wonders. Shelves lined the walls, laden with jars of herbs, bundles of dried flowers, ancient-looking books with leather bindings, and curious, polished stones. A large, intricate loom dominated one corner, its threads a rainbow of natural dyes. The air was warm and smelled of chamomile, cedar, and something indefinably old and magical. Lyra gestured to a small, worn wooden stool beside the hearth, where a fire crackled merrily. "Zit, child, you carry a heavy question in your heart, do you not?" Elara nodded, placing her basket of offerings on a nearby table. "Yes, Lyra, I need to talk to you about something I see, something I feel." She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "It's about the shimmering lights, the ones that drift in the air, that make the forest feel alive." Lyra's eyes, those ancient, knowing eyes, softened further. She picked up a half-finished weaving from her loom, her gnarled fingers deftly working a new thread into the intricate pattern. "Ah, the light dancers," she murmured. "The whispers of the world's breath. You see them, don't you, little starling? As I knew you would." Elara's breath caught. Someone else knew. Someone else understood in. A wave of relief, so profound it almost brought tears to her eyes, washed over her. "You see them too," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Lyra chuckled softly. "Not as you do, Elara. My sight is dimmed with age, and I never had your particular gift. But I have felt them, known of them, since I was a girl. And I have heard the old stories. You speak of the Whis, do you not? That is what you call them?" Elara nodded vigorously. "Yes, exactly, the Whis. But Lyra, they're fading. They're growing fainter, fewer. The moon petals are dull, the honey less sweet. Even the forest feels quieter, like a song that's slowly losing its notes." Lyra sighed, a long, weary sound that seemed to carry the weight of centuries. She set down her weaving, her gaze fixed on the dancing flames in the hearth. "You speak the truth, Elara, a truth that many have forgotten or never learned to see. The Whis, as you rightly call them, are indeed fading, and they have been for a very long time." She turned her gaze back to Elara, her eyes now serious, almost somber. "The Whis, child, are fragments of the Song of Stars. When the world was young, the stars sang their melodies directly into the fabric of creation. Their light, imbued with ancient magic, fell to earth as pure essence, sustaining all life, fueling all wonder. The Whis are the last echoes of that grand song, the residual magic that keeps our world vibrant." Elara listened, captivated, her heart pounding with a mixture of awe and growing dread. "The Song of Stars?" "Aye," Lyra confirmed. "It is said that without the song, the world would turn to grey, its colors muted, its magic drained. Life would persist, but without joy, without spirit. The Whis are the very spark of magic that allows a seed to sprout against all odds, a healer's touch to mend a broken bone, a storyteller's words to conjure images in the mind. They are the essence of hope and possibility." "But why are they fading?" Elara asked, her voice barely a whisper. "What happened to the song?" Lyra shook her head slowly. The old tales speak of a great forgetting, a turning away from the ancient ways. As the hearts of humankind grew heavier with worry and ambition, as their eyes focused more on the tangible and less on the ethereal, the connection to the song weakened. The stars still sing, Elara, but their melodies no longer reach us as they once did. The Whis that fall now are like faint, desperate pleas, not the grand. She picked up a small, polished river stone from her mantle, turning it over and over in her fingers. For generations we, the few who remembered, have watched them diminish. But you are right, Elara. In recent times, the fading has quickened. The silence grows louder. The world truly is losing its song. Elara felt a chill despite the warmth of the fire. Is there anything that can be done? Can the song be rekindled? Lyra's gaze sharpened, piercing through Elara with an intensity that belied her age. There are whispers in the oldest legends, Elara, prophecies of a time of deepest dimness when a heart that still hears the song will be called to seek its source. A legend speaks of a place where the song of stars still resonates with its ancient power, a place where the Whis are born anew. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a near whisper. They say that to reach this place, one must follow the path of the lost star, a star that appears only once in an age, its light a beacon to those who would mend the world's broken song. And the journey is long and fraught with forgotten paths and slumbering guardians. Lyra reached into the pocket of her shawl and pulled out a small, intricately carved wooden pendant. Ironed knot. It was shaped like a stylized star, its points delicate and smooth. This belonged to my grandmother, and her grandmother before her. It is said to pulse faintly when the lost star draws near. It is not much, but it is a beginning. She pressed the pendant into Elara's hand. It felt warm, smooth, and strangely alive. Elara gazed at the pendant, then back at Lyra, her mind reeling with the enormity of what she was hearing. A quest. A journey to rekindle the Song of Stars. It was a tale straight out of the very book she loved to read, but this was real. And she, Elara, the quiet girl who saw more than others, was being called to it. A tremor of fear ran through her, quickly followed by a surge of something else, a deep, resonant certainty. She was the one who saw. She was the one who heard. If the Whis were the world's song, and she was the only one who truly understood its fading melody, then perhaps she was the only one who could help bring it back. The thought was daunting, terrifying, and yet profoundly right. She clutched the star pendant. Its warmth spread through her palm, a tiny spark of courage in the face of the unknown. I'll go, she said, her voice quiet but firm. I'll find the lost star. I'll find the source of the Whis. Lyra smiled, a genuine, hopeful smile that erased years from her face. I knew you would, little starling. The path will not be easy. It will take you far from Oakhaven, into lands you've only dreamed of. But your heart, Elara, is already attuned to the song. And that, more than any map or sword, will be your truest guide. Elara looked down at the wooden star in her hand, then out the small cottage window, towards the darkening forest. Beyond the familiar boughs of the whisperwood lay mountains, deserts, and perhaps even skies where islands floated like clouds. A vast, unknown world awaited her, a world that needed its song restored. The journey had begun. The journey had begun. Elara clutched the wooden star, its smooth surface warm against her palm. Lyra's words echoed in her mind, a soft melody of purpose and wonder. She looked at the darkening forest, no longer a familiar border but a threshold. The whisperwood, usually a comforting presence of rustling leaves and chirping crickets, now seemed to hold a deeper, quieter secret, a waiting hush. She went to her small chest, a simple wooden box carved with a single looping vine. Inside lay her few treasures, a small pouch of dried berries, a flint and steel, a sturdy knife, and a faded wool cloak that had belonged to her grandmother. She packed them carefully, her movements deliberate, each item a small anchor in the vastness of the unknown. Her gaze fell upon the lute, leaning against the wall, its strings silent. Lyra had taught her the simplest melodies, but Elara had always felt an inexplicable pull to its wood, a resonance beneath her fingertips that spoke of more than just sound. She hesitated, then strapped it to her back, its weight a comforting presence. It felt right. With a deep breath that smelled of pine and damp earth, Elara stepped out of the cottage. The twilight air was cool, carrying the scent of night-blooming jasmine. She glanced back at the small, sturdy dwelling, a home filled with quiet memories. A bittersweet pang tightened her chest, but it was quickly overshadowed by a rising tide of anticipation. The world called, and her heart, attuned to the song, yearned to answer. She entered the Whisperwood not through the well-worn path to the village, but through a tangle of old growth, where ancient oaks with gnarled limbs reached towards each other like silent giants. The forest floor was a carpet of moss and fallen leaves, softened by generations of gentle decay. Here, the air was thicker, cooler, carrying a faint, earthy musk. The usual chorus of nocturnal creatures was muted, a hushed symphony that spoke of the silent age Lyra had described. Even the rustle of leaves seemed hesitant, a whisper afraid to break the quiet. Elara walked slowly, her senses alert. The wooden star in her hand pulsed faintly, a warmth that spread through her fingers, up her arm, and into her chest. It wasn't a visible light, but an inner glow, guiding her gaze. She noticed things she had never seen before. A patch of luminous fungi clinging to a fallen log, casting a soft ethereal light. A spiderweb shimmering with an almost imperceptible iridescence, each strand vibrating with a faint, unheard hum. As she delved deeper, the trees grew taller, their branches intertwining to form a dense canopy that filtered the moonlight into dappled silver coins on the forest floor. The silence here was more profound. It wasn't merely the absence of sound, but an underlying lack, a missing vibrancy, a muted energy. The colors of the mosses and ferns seemed less vivid, the scent of the earth less rich. It was as if the world was holding its breath, waiting. Then, she felt it. A faint dissonance, a tremor beneath the silence. It was a feeling more than a sound, a subtle ache in the air, like a forgotten chord struggling to resonate. Elara paused, closing her eyes, letting the sensation wash over her. The wooden star thrummed gently in her hand. The song, she realized. This was the fading of it, the quiet despair of a world losing its melody. She opened her eyes and looked around, searching. The feeling led her off the faint game trail she had been following, deeper into a thicket of thorny bushes. Carefully she pushed through the branches, her cloak snagging slightly. Beyond the thorns, the trees thinned into a small clearing bathed in moonlight. In the center of the clearing stood a single magnificent silver birch, its bark glowing faintly, its delicate leaves shimmering. But something was wrong. One side of the tree, from its roots to its highest branches, was dull, lifeless. The bark was gray and cracked, the leaves withered and brown. It was as if a line had been drawn down its trunk, separating vibrant life from slow decay. Elara approached the tree, her heart aching with a sorrow that wasn't entirely her own. She placed her hand on the vibrant silver bark. It felt cool and alive, a faint pulse beneath her palm. Then she touched the withered side. It was brittle, cold, and utterly still. The dissonance she had felt was strongest here, a wailing silence emanating from the dying half of the tree. She remembered Lyra's words about the song being the harmony of existence. This tree was a stark manifestation of its fading. One half still clung to the melody, the other had lost its tune. Hesitantly, Elara reached for her lute. Her fingers, guided by an instinct she didn't understand, found the strings. She plucked a single, soft note. It was a simple G-string, but in the profound silence of the clearing, it resonated with an unexpected depth. The sound vibrated through the air, touching the tree. As the note faded, something extraordinary happened. The silver birch seemed to sigh. A faint tremor ran through its living half, and a single glistening tear of sap welled on its bark, tracing a silver path downwards. Elara watched, mesmerized. She plucked another note, then another, letting her fingers find a simple, intuitive melody. It wasn't a song she knew, but one that seemed to emerge from the silence itself, a gentle lament, a hopeful whisper. As the notes flowed, the air in the clearing seemed to thicken, to hum. The luminous fungi on the nearby log pulsed brighter. The tiny iridescent spiderweb shimmered with renewed vigor. And then, a tiny, almost imperceptible green bud appeared on one of the withered branches of the silver birch. It was minute, fragile, but undeniably there. Elara gasped, her fingers faltering on the strings. She looked from the bud to her lute, then back to the tree. The dissonance in the air had lessened, replaced by a fragile nascent harmony. A tiny, high-pitched squeak startled her. From the base of the birch, a small creature emerged. It was no bigger than her thumb, with large, luminous eyes and fur the color of moss. It looked like a miniature squirrel, but instead of a bushy tail, it had a tail that fanned out like a delicate, translucent wing, shimmering with faint internal light. The creature scampered up the tree, its tiny claws barely disturbing the bark. It stopped beside the newly formed bud, nudged it gently with its nose, then looked at Elara with an intelligent, inquisitive gaze. "A sylph squirrel," a soft voice murmured from the shadows. Elara spun around, her hand instinctively going to the small knife at her belt. Stepping out from behind a cluster of ferns was a figure she hadn't seen before. It was a woman, tall and slender, with hair the color of midnight and eyes that gleamed like polished obsidian. She wore clothes woven from dark, shimmering fibers, adorned with tiny bells that tinkled faintly with her every movement, a sound that seemed to chase away the last vestiges of the clearing's profound silence. "Don't be alarmed," the woman said, her voice like the rustle of dry leaves, soft but clear. "I mean you no harm. My name is Lyria, and I have been waiting for you, Elara." Elara lowered her hand from her knife, her brow furrowed. "You know my name, and you were waiting." Lyria smiled, a slow, knowing curve of her lips. "The Whisperwood knows many things, little song weaver, and when the song begins to stir, the forest folk feel it. We have felt the silence deepen for many long years, and now we feel a tremor of hope." She gestured towards the silver birch. "That a moon birch, a sentinel of the forest, its suffering has been great. To see even a single bud return, it is a miracle." She looked at Elara, with an intensity that made Elara feel as if she were being seen right through. "You have the gift, child, the ability to resonate with the song, to mend the dissonance." I just played a simple tune," Elara stammered, feeling overwhelmed. "Simple perhaps to your ears, but to the moon birch, it was the sound of home, a memory of harmony." Lyria's gaze fell upon the wooden star in Elara's hand. "Ah, the star compass. Lyra herself gave it to you, I presume." Elara nodded, surprised. "You know Lyra?" "We are kin of the forest, though our paths diverge. Lyra tends the ancient knowledge, the history of the song. We, the Whisperkin, tend its living breath within the trees. She knew you would come. She always knows." Lyria knelt by the moon birch, gently touching the new bud. "This is a good start, Elara. But the Whisperwood is vast, and the silent age has cast its shadow far and wide." The sylph squirrel, having finished its inspection of the bud, scurried down the tree and settled on Lyria's shoulder, its luminous eyes fixed on Elara. "The star compass will guide you," Lyria continued, rising. "It points not to true north, but to places where the song is most wounded, or where its purest echoes still remain. It is a guide for your heart, not just your feet." She tapped the wooden star with a long, slender finger. "Where does it draw you now?" Elara looked down at the star. It pulsed more strongly now, a gentle tug in her palm. She extended her arm, letting the star lead her gaze. It pointed deeper into the Whisperwood, towards a part she had never ventured into, the direction of the ancient, towering peaks known as the Dragon's Teeth Mountains, which shimmered faintly even from her distant cottage. "It leads towards the mountains," Elara said, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and trepidation. Lyria's expression grew serious. "The Dragon's Teeth. A perilous journey, even in times when the song sang strong. In the Silent Age, it is said that the very stones weep for forgotten melodies. But if the star compass guides you there, then there must be a reason. Perhaps the song's oldest voices, the stone echoes, still sleep within their peaks." "Stone echoes?" Elara asked, intrigued. "Long ago when the world was young, the song was not just in the living things, but in the very fabric of the earth," Lyria explained, her voice taking on a narrative cadence. "The mountains sang, the rivers hummed, the very air vibrated with creation. The stone echoes are the lingering resonances of those ancient foundational harmonies, locked within certain crystals and sacred rock formations. They are powerful, but dormant, like sleeping giants." Lyria looked at the sylph squirrel on her shoulder. It chittered softly, its luminous tail flickering. "This little one, Phelan, will accompany you for a while. Sylph squirrels are attuned to the most delicate vibrations of the song. He can help you discern where its echoes are weakest, and where they might yet be coaxed to awaken." Phelan scampered onto Elara's shoulder, his tiny paws surprisingly light. He sniffed her hair, then nudged her ear with his nose, a soft, encouraging sound escaping him. Elara felt a peculiar warmth spread through her, a sense of companionship. "The Whisperwood itself holds many secrets, Elara," Lyria said, her gaze sweeping over the moonlit clearing. "It is not merely a path to the mountains, but a test, a teacher. Listen to its whispers, even in the silence. They hold clues." She reached into a small pouch at her waist and withdrew a handful of tiny, shimmering seeds. "These are moondew seeds. Plant one wherever you find a place that feels particularly lost to the silence. They will absorb your song melody and bloom, creating small beacons of harmony, helping to mend the world, one tiny note at a time." She pressed them into Elara's hand. They felt cool, like polished river stones. "Thank you, Lyria," Elara said, clutching the seeds and the star compass. She felt a surge of gratitude for this unexpected ally, this first glimpse of the wider world's inhabitants. Lyria nodded, her dark eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Go now, Elara. The path is long, but your heart is true. The Whisperwood will be your first teacher." With a graceful turn, she melted back into the shadows of the forest, the faint tinkling of her bells fading into the quiet. Elara stood alone once more, but not truly alone. Phelan the sylph squirrel chirped softly on her shoulder, and the moondew seeds felt weighty and significant in her palm. The wooden star pulsed, a steady beat in her hand. She looked towards the direction it indicated, deeper into the ancient woods, towards the distant, silvered peaks. She continued her journey, Phelan riding comfortably on her shoulder, his luminous tail a tiny, comforting beacon. The star compass hummed with gentle guidance, drawing her towards a section of the Whisperwood that was even more ancient, more untouched. Here, the trees were colossal, their roots like sleeping serpents coiling across the forest floor. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, and the silence was almost overwhelming. It pressed in on her, a physical weight that made her own breath feel loud. Phelan suddenly chittered excitedly, pointing a tiny paw towards a massive hollowed-out oak dart. Its trunk was so wide that Elara could have stood inside it. The wood was dark, almost black, and felt strangely cold, even to the touch. The star compass vibrated with a frantic energy, pulling her towards it. "What is it, Phelan?" Elara whispered, her voice barely audible in the profound quiet. Phelan scampered off her shoulder and darted inside the hollow trunk. Elara hesitated, then followed. The interior was surprisingly spacious, a circular chamber formed by the ancient wood. No light penetrated from above, but a faint eerie glow emanated from the far wall. As her eyes adjusted, Elara saw it. Embedded in the wood, surrounded by intricate, faded carvings of swirling patterns and celestial bodies, was a large crystalline shard. It pulsed with a weak, flickering light, barely illuminating the carvings. It was a dull, mournful violet, and it seemed to absorb all sound, creating a pocket of absolute crushing silence around itself. Elara felt the dissonance again, sharper than before. This wasn't just a fading song, it was a captured one, a muffled cry trapped within the crystal. Phelan was huddled near it, trembling, his luminous tail almost extinguished. "This must be one of the stone echoes," Elara murmured, remembering Lyria's words. "But it's trapped." She reached out a hesitant hand towards the crystal. As her fingers neared its surface, a jolt, not of electricity but of pure sorrow, shot through her. It felt like touching a wound. The silence intensified, threatening to overwhelm her. She felt a wave of despair, a profound sense of loss that made her want to sink to the ground and weep. This was the true weight of the Silent Age, not just an absence, but an active suppression of joy, of connection, of life itself. Taking a deep breath, Elara pushed past the despair. She knew what she had to do. She pulled out her lute. Her fingers, usually nimble, felt clumsy with the weight of the silence. She struggled to find a note, any note, that wouldn't be swallowed by the void. Phelan, seeing her struggle, chittered softly, his tiny paw reaching out to touch her hand. His touch, though small, brought a spark of connection, a reminder of companionship. Elara closed her eyes, focusing not on the crystal, but on the feeling Phelan's touch evoked: warmth, presence, a shared journey. She thought of Lyra's wisdom, Lyra's hope, the tiny green bud on the moon birch. She remembered the gentle hum of the star compass, the feeling of the song within her own heart. Then, she began to play. Not a simple tune this time, but a deeper and more complex melody that seemed to flow from her very soul. It was a song of longing, of resilience, of the quiet strength that endures even in the darkest times. She poured her heart into each note, each chord, coaxing the lute to sing with a resonance that defied the oppressive silence. At first, the crystal seemed to resist, its violet glow flickering angrily, trying to push her music away. The despair in the air thickened, making her throat tight, her fingers heavy. But Elara persisted, her eyes still closed, her focus absolute. She imagined the song not as an external force, but as a river of light flowing from her, around the lute, and towards the crystal. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, the violet glow began to change. A faint blue tinged its edges, then a soft green. The oppressive silence began to recede, replaced by a subtle hum, an echo of her own melody. The carvings on the ancient oak around the crystal seemed to deepen, their lines glowing faintly, as if awakened by the sound. As Elara played on, the crystal pulsed with increasing intensity, its colors shifting and swirling, violet, blue, green, then a warm gold, like captured sunlight. The trapped sorrow began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of profound peace, of ancient wisdom stirring. With a final ringing chord, Elara finished her song. The crystal now glowed with a steady, vibrant golden light, illuminating the entire hollow. The air within the oak pulsed with a deep, resonant hum, a melody not of her lute, but of the awakened stone echo itself. It was a low, vibrational thrum that resonated in her bones, a feeling of the earth itself singing. Phelan, no longer trembling, scampered forward, his luminous tail now shining brightly. He touched the golden crystal with his nose, and a ripple of pure joy seemed to emanate from him. Elara felt exhausted but exhilarated. The despair was gone, replaced by a quiet sense of accomplishment. She had not only played the song, she had restored a piece of it. As she watched, a small sliver of the golden crystal detached itself from the larger shard, floating gently towards her. It was no bigger than her thumbnail, perfectly smooth and radiating a soft, golden light. It hovered in front of her, then settled gently into the palm of her hand, next to the wooden star compass. It was warm, pulsing with a faint, steady beat, like a tiny heart. The star compass, in turn, seemed to drink in its light, its own inner warmth growing stronger. Lyra's words came back to her. Stone echoes are the lingering resonances of those ancient foundational harmonies, powerful, but dormant, like sleeping giants. This small shard was a piece of that awakened giant. A piece of the song, Elara whispered, awestruck. Phelan chittered, nudging her hand. He then pointed a tiny paw towards the entrance of the hollow oak, towards the direction the star compass had been indicating all along, but now with a renewed urgency. The mountains. Elara looked at the glowing golden shard in her hand, then at the wooden star, which now shone with a soft inner luminescence. This was more than just a compass. It was a vessel, gathering the fragments of the song as she awakened them. Stepping out of the hollow oak, Elara felt the whisper wood differently. The crushing silence was gone, replaced by a gentle, underlying hum. The air felt lighter, fresher. Even the ancient trees seemed to stand a little straighter, their leaves shimmering with a subtle, newfound vibrancy. The moondew seeds Lyra had given her felt warm in her pouch, eager to be planted. She found a small, neglected patch of earth near the base of a particularly gnarled old tree, its bark cracked and gray. Here, the silence had been particularly deep. Elara knelt, and with a silent prayer, planted one of the moondew seeds. As she covered it with earth, she hummed the melody that had awakened the stone echo, pouring her song into the tiny seed. A soft golden glow emanated from the spot where she had planted it, a tiny beacon of light in the forest floor. It was a small thing, but it was a beginning. As the first rays of dawn began to filter through the canopy, painting the forest in hues of rose and gold, Elara felt a renewed sense of purpose. The whisperwood had challenged her, tested her, and in return, had given her the first tangible proof of her mission. She carried a piece of the awakened song, a beacon of hope, and the star compass now vibrated with a stronger, clearer pull. Phelan, bright-eyed and energetic, scampered ahead, his luminous tail leaving a faint trail of light in the pre-dawn gloom. He paused at the edge of the whisperwood, where the tree line gave way to rolling hills, and beyond them, the jagged purple silhouettes of the Dragon's Teeth Mountains rose against the brightening sky. The journey was far from over. The whisperwood was but the first chapter. Ahead lay the true challenge, the desolate peaks where the ancient stone echoes slept, waiting for their song to be rekindled. Elara took a deep breath, the crisp morning air filling her lungs. The golden shard in her hand pulsed warmly, a promise and a guide. She stepped out of the whisperwood, leaving behind the waking trees and the nascent hum of rediscovered harmony towards the silent waiting mountains. The song called, and she would answer. The air grew thinner, sharper, carrying the scent of pine and something else, a cold, clean mineral tang, ancient and profound. The gentle slopes of the whisperwood gave way to rolling foothills, dotted with hardy, wind-bent trees that clung stubbornly to life. Beyond them, piercing the hazy blue of the morning sky, rose the jagged silhouettes of the peaks. They were not merely tall, they were vast, immense, a world carved from granite and ice, draped in shadows that seemed to hold stories older than time itself. Elara's steps, light and sure in the whisperwood, now felt more measured, each one a conscious act of will against the rising incline. The golden shard in her hand hummed with a rhythm distinct from her own heartbeat, a steady, encouraging thrum that seemed to echo the quiet pulse of the earth beneath her feet. It was a beacon, not just of light but of purpose, a tiny sun in her palm against the growing chill. The path, if it could be called that, soon dwindled to animal trails, then vanished altogether. She navigated by instinct, by the subtle pull of the shard, and by the sheer undeniable presence of the mountains themselves. They beckoned, a silent, majestic challenge. As she climbed higher, the air became crystalline, biting at her cheeks and stirring her hair. The world below receded, a patchwork quilt of greens and browns, until only the sky, a vast expanse of sapphire, and the colossal peaks remained. Days blurred into a rhythm of ascent. Sunrises painted the highest peaks in hues of rose and gold, only to give way to the stark white and gray of midday, then the long violet shadows of dusk. She found shelter in shallow caves huddled against the cold, her breath pluming in the frigid air. The golden shard radiated a gentle warmth, a small comfort in the vast wilderness. She ate dried berries and nuts she'd gathered, and drank from icy trickles that tasted of pure mountain snow. Loneliness, a quiet companion, sometimes tried to whisper doubts into her mind. How can one small girl awaken the song of mountains? But she met it with the memory of the whisperwood's awakening, the vibrant hum of life she had helped rekindle. If the trees could sing again, surely the stones could too. One evening, as the first stars pricked the deepening twilight, she found herself at the edge of a great silent chasm. It cleaved the mountain face, a dark gaping wound, its depths shrouded in an unnatural gloom. The golden shard pulsed wildly, its warmth intensifying, a clear sign that this was the way. But there was no bridge, no path, only sheer, unyielding rock. The wind, usually a boisterous companion, fell silent here, swallowed by the chasm's maw. An oppressive quiet settled, heavy and profound, a silence that felt ancient and wrong. As she peered into the abyss, a flicker of movement caught her eye. At the very edge of the precipice, nestled among a cluster of hardy mountain flowers that glowed with a faint, silvery light, sat a creature unlike any she had ever seen. It was small, no bigger than a fox, but its fur was not fur at all. It was made of countless tiny interlocking crystals, shimmering with the faint colors of the twilight. Its eyes, twin points of emerald light, regarded her with an unnerving stillness. It was Kale, a spirit of the mountains, a fragment of the stone echoes, not fully dormant, not fully awake. It had waited for centuries, a sentinel of the silence. Elara knelt slowly, extending an open hand, careful not to startle the crystalline creature. "Hello," she whispered, her voice feeling strangely loud in the profound quiet. Kale tilted its head, a shower of tiny bell-like chimes emanating from its crystalline form. It didn't speak with words, but with images and sensations that flowed directly into Elara's mind. "You seek the song. Many have sought. None have found. The silence is deep. Enchanting. I have the shard, Elara said, holding it up. The shard pulsed in agreement, its light reflecting in Kale's emerald eyes. Yeah, key. Yes, Kale projected. But not the only key. The song is not sung with a voice, but with a heart. And the path is not seen with eyes. Enano moanchi, peserniki. Kale turned, and with a delicate leap it seemed to walk beyond the air, across the chasm. Its crystalline paws left shimmering, ephemeral footprints that glowed for a moment before fading. Elara gasped. You mean, I have to step out? Trust the song within you, Kale's thought echoed. Trust the silence that seeks sound. Huh? One yenin. Taking a deep breath, Elara felt the golden shard pulse in her hand, a steady, warm beat. She closed her eyes, not against fear, but to listen more deeply. She listened to the hum of the shard, to the faint, distant memory of the Whisperwood's harmony, and most importantly, to the quiet, unwavering beat of her own heart. She pictured the chasm not as an empty space, but as a path waiting to be formed, a melody waiting to be sung into existence. With her eyes still closed, she took a single brave step forward. For a terrifying moment, there was nothing but air, a dizzying emptiness. Then, a subtle pressure met her foot. She opened her eyes. Beneath her, where Kale's footprints had shimmered, was a bridge of pure, translucent light, solid and unwavering. It stretched across the chasm, connecting her to the other side. Each step she took solidified the light, resonating with the golden shard, until she stood safely on the far side, Kale waiting patiently. The mountains test not strength, but spirit, Kale conveyed. Kai higher you climb, the deeper the tests. Kangani, Kain down warranted Kamain, one key. The crystalline fox then led her deeper into the mountains, past landscapes that grew increasingly surreal. They traversed fields of silent, shimmering ice that hummed faintly underfoot, where frozen waterfalls hung like colossal, glittering sculptures. They navigated through tunnels where crystalline stalactites dripped with light, and the very air seemed to hold ancient, untold secrets. The silence grew heavier with each passing day. It was not merely the absence of sound, but an active, oppressive force that seemed to absorb all energy, all joy. It seeped into her bones, making her thoughts feel sluggish, her spirit heavy. Even the golden shard's pulse seemed muted, its light struggling against the pervasive gloom. This was the true desolation the prophecy spoke of, not just barren rock, but a profound absence of life's vibrant hum. One morning they reached a plateau. Before them stood a colossal edifice of black polished stone rising from the earth like a forgotten temple. Its surface was smooth, reflective, absorbing all light, all sound. It was utterly devoid of markings, of doors, of any discernible feature. It simply, unwasis, a monument to the ultimate silence. Part of the echoes, Kale's thought resonated. Percy, chamber of slumber. Here, the song was lost. Here, it must be found. Enchanting, and I one mighty cane, Elara approached the obsidian monolith, her hand reaching out. As her fingers brushed the cold, smooth surface, a wave of profound despair washed over her. It was not her own feeling, but an echo of the mountain's sorrow, a millennia of silence, of forgotten purpose. It felt like a vast ancient weariness, a longing so deep it threatened to consume her. The shadow of silence, Kale projected, its form shimmering with a concerned light. Kid, tests your resolve. It seeks to make you one with its emptiness. Whined he. Elara stumbled back, clutching her chest, the golden shard now a burning ember in her hand, fighting against the invading despair. She squeezed her eyes shut, fighting to push back the wave of sorrow. She thought of the laughing stream in the Whisperwood, of the rustling leaves, of the joyous chirping of the awakened birds. She thought of the promise of the song, the vibrant future waiting to be born. She had to remember her own melody, her own purpose. No, she whispered, her voice trembling but firm. No, I will not be silent. She took another step towards the black stone, then another, pushing through the suffocating despair. With each step, she focused on her own inner harmony, the quiet strength that had carried her this far. The golden shard flared, its light pushing back the encroaching shadows. When her hand touched the stone again, the despair was still there, but it no longer threatened to overwhelm her. She could feel it, acknowledge it, but not be consumed by it. It was the mountain's pain, not her own. As her hand rested on the stone, the golden shard began to vibrate with an intense low thrum, a deep resonance that seemed to awaken the stone itself. A faint, ethereal glow began to emanate from the monolith, revealing subtle, intricate patterns that had been hidden by the silence. These were not carvings, but lines of energy, veins of ancient magic running through the stone. Suddenly, a section of the monolith, previously seamless, began to recede, sliding inwards with a sound like grinding earth, revealing a dark, cavernous opening. The air within was even colder, heavy with the scent of ancient dust and sleeping power. "The way is open," Kale conveyed, its emerald eyes fixed on the entrance. "But the true test awaits within." The heart of the stone echoes is not a place, but a state of being. You must find their frequency, their original vibration, and echo it back to them. Wood, ontund, wantatit, mononasik tea. Ilara nodded, her heart thrumming with a mixture of apprehension and unwavering resolve. She stepped into the darkness, the golden shard her only guide, casting a warm, pulsating light that danced on unseen walls. Kale followed, its crystalline form a silent, shimmering presence behind her. The passage sloped downwards, winding ever deeper into the mountain's core. The air grew stiller, heavier, until it felt like liquid around her. The golden shard's light intensified, revealing walls that were not merely stone, but seemed to be woven from solidified starlight and raw earth. Intricate patterns like the roots of ancient trees or the flow of underground rivers glowed faintly beneath the surface. At last, the passage opened into a vast circular chamber. It was utterly immense, its ceiling lost in shadow, its floor a smooth, polished surface that reflected the golden shard's light like a still pool. In the very center of the chamber, suspended in a field of shimmering, almost invisible energy, floated a colossal, irregular crystal. It was not transparent like Kale, but opaque, swirling with internal colors, deep blues, earthy greens, fiery oranges, like a miniature galaxy captured within stone. This was the heart of the stone echoes. Around the central crystal, arranged in a perfect circle, were 9 smaller, equally ancient stones. Each was unique. One was black as obsidian, another white as bone, one veined with silver, another with copper, one glowing faintly with internal luminescence, another rough and earthy, one smooth as river stone, one sharp and crystalline, and the last, a deep, resonant purple. These were the stone echoes themselves, the primal spirits of the mountain, slumbering. The silence in this chamber was absolute, profound. It pressed down on her, a physical weight that threatened to crush all sound, all thought. It was the silence of forgotten ages, of a song lost for so long that its very memory had faded from the world. Ilara walked towards the central crystal, her footsteps absorbed by the silent floor. The golden shard in her hand pulsed with an almost frantic energy, vibrating against her palm. It was trying to tell her something, to guide her. She reached the edge of the central crystal's energy field. The air here shimmered, distorting her vision slightly. She could feel the immense, sleeping power radiating from the crystal, a power that was immense yet utterly still, like a vast ocean frozen solid. Sleep deeply, Kale's thought echoed, more subdued now, as if even its own fragmented spirit was awed by the heart. Their song is but a whisper, barely remembered. You must call it forth. Down. Ilara closed her eyes, holding the golden shard tightly. She focused, not on singing a melody, but on listening. She listened for the faintest echo of the mountain's original pulse, for the forgotten vibration that lay buried beneath the millennia of silence. She reached out with her spirit, with her heart, trying to feel the pain of the slumbering stone echoes, their deep, aching longing to awaken. At first, there was nothing. Only the crushing silence, the weight of ages. Then, faint, almost imperceptible, she felt it. A tiny, almost imperceptible tremor deep within the central crystal. It was like the first, hesitant beat of a heart long still, a whisper of a frequency, a ghost of a vibration. It was the faintest echo of the song. The golden shard flared, resonating with this faint tremor. It amplified it, feeding it into Alara's very being. She felt the ancient frequency resonate within her own bones, her own spirit. It was not a grand melody, but a fundamental hum, a deep, primal thrumming that was the very essence of earth, of time, of mountain. Alara opened her mouth, not to sing with her voice, but to resonate with her entire being. She poured her heart, her courage, her connection to the awakened whisperwood, and the raw, pure energy of the golden shard into that faint, ancient hum. She became a conduit, a living tuning fork, echoing the song back to its source. A low, almost inaudible vibration began to fill the chamber. It started as a whisper, then grew, slowly, inexorably, into a deep, resonant hum. It was not a loud sound, but a pervasive one, a feeling that vibrated through the air, through the stone, through Alora's very cells. The central crystal began to glow, its internal colors swirling and intensifying, pulsing with a slow, majestic rhythm. The 9 surrounding stone echoes began to stir. The obsidian stone pulsed with a deep, earthy thrum. The white one shimmered with a cool, clear vibration. The silver-veined stone sang with a high ethereal note, while the copper-veined one resonated with a rich, warm tone. The internally luminous stone glowed brighter, its light dancing to the rhythm of the hum. The rough, earthy stone seemed to breathe, emitting a deep, grounding frequency. The smooth river stone hummed with a gentle, flowing melody. The sharp, crystalline stone chimed with clear, bell-like tones. And the deep purple stone resonated with a profound, almost spiritual vibration, tying all the others together. Each stone echo was awakening, not to a single song, but to its own unique frequency, its own harmony, all united by the central primal hum that Alara was now pouring into the chamber. The silence began to crack, to shatter, replaced by a symphony of deep, ancient sounds. It wasn't music in the human sense, but a powerful elemental choir of vibrations, a living, breathing harmony of the earth itself. The chamber filled with light, not blinding but soft, ethereal, like dawn breaking over an ancient world. The energy field around the central crystal shimmered and intensified, sending waves of pure, revitalizing magic flowing outwards. Alara felt it wash over her, invigorating her, filling her with a sense of profound connection and peace. The stone echoes in their awakening were not just sounds, they were consciousness. Alara felt their ancient minds stir, their vast awareness expanding, taking in the world once more. She felt their gratitude, a wave of profound, wordless thanks that brought tears to her eyes. The mountain itself began to awaken. Deep within its core, a gentle tremor began, not of destruction, but of reawakening. The air outside the chamber, once still and oppressive, now hummed with a vibrant, living energy. Alara slowly released her connection, the golden shard still warm in her hand, its light now steady and brilliant. The song had been rekindled. The stone echoes were awake. Kale, the crystalline fox, shimmered with an intense, joyful light. Its emerald eyes met Alara's, and she felt a wave of pure, unadulterated delight flow from it. "Her song, it sings again. For ages, we waited." As Kel's thoughts resonated, its form began to shift. The individual crystals that made up its body seemed to flow and melt into each other, growing brighter, larger. Kale was transforming, rejoining the greater song, becoming a part of the vibrant, living mountain once more. With a final radiant burst of light, Kale dissolved into a shower of shimmering dust that floated upwards, merging with the central crystal, adding its own spark to the rekindled song. Alara stood alone in the heart of the awakened mountain, bathed in the gentle, powerful light and the profound, harmonious hum of the stone echoes. She felt small, yet connected to something immeasurably vast and ancient. She had done it. She had answered the call. The journey back was different. The silence was gone, replaced by a subtle, pervasive hum that resonated from the very stones. The air was crisp, but now carried a new scent, not just mineral but a faint, sweet aroma of earth, stirring to life. As she emerged from the black monolith, its surface no longer absorbed light, but subtly reflected the gentle internal glow of the awakening mountain. The oppressive gloom that had shrouded the chasm was gone, replaced by a soft, ethereal light. Even the hardy mountain flowers on the precipice seemed to glow with renewed vitality. She retraced her steps, guided by the golden shard, which now pulsed with a steady, contented rhythm, as if its task was complete. The treacherous path seemed less daunting, the winds less biting. The mountain, once desolate and silent, now felt alive, a vast, gentle giant slowly stretching awake. She could feel its breath in the wind, its pulse in the earth beneath her feet. As she descended the lower slopes, she began to see the subtle changes. Streams that had been mere trickles now flowed with a livelier current, their waters clear and sparkling. Patches of moss, vibrant green, appeared where only barren rock had been. The wind-bent trees seemed to stand a little straighter, their needles a deeper green. The magic of the awakened stone echoes was flowing outwards, seeping into the land, bringing it back to life. She paused at the edge of the foothills, looking back at the colossal peaks. They still rose majestically, but they were no longer grim or desolate. A faint, almost imperceptible shimmer of energy danced around their highest points, and she could almost hear the deep, resonant hum of their rekindled song, a symphony of earth and ancient power. The mountains were alive, singing their silent, profound melody to the world. Elara felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. She had come a long way from the quiet village, a girl who had only just begun to hear the whispers of magic. Now, she carried the echo of the mountain song within her, a part of her very being. The golden shard in her hand, its light, gentle and constant, now felt like an extension of herself, a tool that had helped her unlock not just the world's magic, but her own. She knew her journey wasn't truly over. The world was vast, and there were always new songs to be found, new harmonies to be awakened. But for now, her task was complete. She had helped the ancient mountains remember their song, and in doing so, she had found her own. As she walked, she hummed a soft wordless melody, a blend of the whisper wood's gentle rustling and the mountain's deep, resonant thrum. It was her own unique song, born of connection, courage, and the pure, unyielding magic of a heart that dared to listen. The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, as Elara stepped onto a familiar path leading back towards her village. The air was sweet with the scent of pine and damp earth, and in the distance, she could hear the gentle murmur of the river, now flowing with a stronger, clearer voice. The world around her felt brighter, more vibrant, as if a veil had been lifted. She knew the villagers might not understand the grand scale of what she had done, the ancient power she had stirred. But they would feel it, in the renewed vitality of the land, in the richness of the soil, in the clearer waters, in the very air they breathed. They would feel the world singing once more, a harmony deeper and more profound than any they had known. Elara smiled, a quiet, contented smile. She had been called by a whisper, and she had answered with a song. And as the stars began to prick the darkening sky, she knew, with a certainty that hummed in her soul, that the magic of the world was not just out there, in ancient woods or silent mountains, but within every living thing, waiting to be heard, waiting to be sung. And sometimes all it took was one brave heart to remember how to listen. The world slept soundly, and so too did Elara, dreaming of harmonies yet to be discovered.